And in this video, we are going to talk about something really important because our kids spend a ton of time in study posture. And so what I'm going to go through is we're going to talk about some very important basic things that you need to know to make sure that we're protecting the kids, right? Because when they're spending several hours a day at school and then several hours potentially at home doing homework, we want to think about the impact this may have on the way that their spine is going to be affected, both for the short term and the long term. One of the bigger things that I always try and teach our kids is about the importance of keeping what we call a neutral spine. Whenever the spine is outside of its natural curves, which is heads looking down, backs rounded out, things along that lines, it can have a lot of long-term impacts that we don't think about when they're kids because they're very resilient. But we're starting to see more and more kids coming in at younger ages having things like headaches, demonstrating low back pain. And we talked about that in the backpacks video, but I want to dig into this a little bit deeper here about some basic things that maybe some of us just don't have an awareness about. So I'm going to load up our slide presentation here so we can dig a little bit deeper into this for you, okay? So again, this presentation is called Study Posture. Let's spare their spine. So let's talk about some basics. So we look at this picture, and one of the big things we talk about is that there has to be just this really neutral position established. So feel free if you want to grab a snapshot of this, but we always look for things like the 90-90-90 rule. We want the hips, knees, and feet should all be at 90-degree angles. So when your child is sitting at their desk, whether it's at home or at school, this should be the position they're able to maintain, because that neutral position here protects the spine, the hips, the low back. It also balances the forces. We always talk about this thing called a tripod stance. And so a tripod stance literally means that when your child is sitting, they should have a tripod position where their heels are on the ground, right, allowing them to disperse some of the weight of their body back into the heels, and 90-degree angles at the knees, and then shared weight between the hips and the spine, so that there's no place on their body that's carrying too much. If they sit with their feet too close together, toes elevated, or toes hanging, all of those things will then switch what parts of the body now are carrying the weight of their spine, or the weight of gravity, and it'll start to cause an impact on their spine. Want to make sure that if they are using a chair, whether at home or at school, that the chair does have a good firm support. We also want to make sure that they're able to have their elbows and shoulders in a relaxed position while they're at their desk. Now, we talk about this here from a couple of different perspectives, right? We want to make sure that we're doing what we can to keep them neutral, but there's some different things here that aren't on this slide here that we're going to want to dig into as well. So let's just go through this real quick. A child may need their positioning checked if they're standing up when they're working. They swing and kick their feet all the time. Never a good thing here because it's causing a forward roll in their pelvis, so they're not equally supported. If the desk rests on their thighs, they wrap their ankles around the legs of the chair. That's never a good thing. And the top of the table or desk comes up to their armpits. So it means that they need something to elevate them if they're sitting at a desk, and that is their position. The other thing is always be considerate too if the child can't sit with their back against the back of the chair and their feet on the floor at the same time. So make sure we have an appropriate fitting chair so that they're in a properly fitted position at all times. Now, we talk about the study posture, and so we talk about this the way that their neck is going to be taxed when they're looking down in school and at class. So this actually is a pediatric x-ray, and I wanted to show this to you because the x-ray that is on the right side is what a neutral neck is essentially supposed to look like, pretty darn close to where it should be. The one that's on the neck that says reverse pediatric cervical curve, we are seeing this a lot in younger kids. And it's because of the position they're put into to read. So if you look at the little girl, right, this is how most of our kids read. So I'm a dad. I've got two little ones, a little girl that is in second grade and a little boy that's going into kindergarten. And we talk to them often about bringing everything up to eye level so that when they are reading their books, they're not having to stare down, because the reverse cervical curve, this is happening more and more often and at younger ages in our kids. The one that you see where it says normal pediatric cervical curve is crucial because the spinal cord, when it is at normal tension, functions best. So our brain above's job is simple. It communicates to the body beneath via the spinal cord. If the spinal alignment, right, the structure that protects the spinal cord is compromised, it's going to make the messages more and more difficult for the brain to transmit down. And so if you look even in the middle of the x-ray on the left-hand side, the reverse curve, you see several different spots on there where it says 2, 3, 4, where the curve is going in the wrong direction. That actually is stretching their spinal cord. And so the more stretching there is between those nerves, the more difficult it is for the brain to get those messages back and forth. But the other side is that those things are likely causing a barrage in the background because the brainstem lives there. Then it can arouse their fight or flight response. And so if you see a lot of kids that are dealing with anxiety and stress, we tend to find there's a lot of correlation to loss of normal motion and positioning at the brainstem region because it's such a significant contributor of normal motion and alignment to their brain. And so between the first and second vertebra, 60% of the nerve fibers that control our motion sensor in the spine, 33% of those live between the first and second vertebra. If that area stops moving incorrect or starts moving incorrectly, it creates a significant amount of background noise, making it very difficult for them to have things like proper focus organization, ability to self-regulate, ability to calm themselves down when they get upset. So the ability to manage anxiety, oftentimes it can affect things like their sensory systems, because the worse that is, the longer that's there, the more it's going to have an impact on the way their brain perceives the world around them. So when you look at the study posture, what we talked about is that C shape, the C shape. And so many kids will slouch and they'll take on the C shape. It's really, really important that we keep the kids in that S shape. So moms and dads, be diligent, making sure that when they are studying, they're trying to maintain the S shape, try and keep them out of the slouch as much as possible. It's really important that we keep the spinal cord and the spinal column in a neutral position because it will eventually result in pain when they sit like this. But more importantly, too, that background noise we talked about, the more the spinal cord is stretched, the worse the body is able to function because the communications network via the spinal cord to the brain is going to be interfered with. Now, when we look at this, so this is one of my favorite little devices. So these reading stands are awesome because they allow our kids to protect their neck curve at a much better level. So one of the things that's great is that they're adjustable in their height. So you can have them put their books, their paperwork on there, and they can read from there. They can even do marking on there because they're pretty strong and pretty heavy duty. Big thing to keep in mind when you look at these, though, is we want to make sure that it's at the appropriate level. So just because it can elevate, we still want to make sure that it's raised up so it's as close to neutral as possible, so that when they are looking at their books, they're not having to look down, they're essentially looking straight ahead. So a couple things here that are also really important. We want to make sure they take appropriate study breaks. 30 minutes is a really important rule. We want to make sure that whenever they're studying or reading for any period of time, about 30 minutes in, make them get up, make them stretch. So going through something as simple as like a little yoga vinyasa, for those of you that are yoga practitioners, is awesome. Because what that does is if we're spending most of our time in a position where we're flexed like this, then we get into yoga poses and we get into extension. And extension helps to bring the spine back to a balance point so that it's in a more neutral position as you go through the course of a study session. So, because remember one thing, in between every single vertebra in our spine are little discs, and they have inside of them this thing called a nucleus. And if you've ever known an adult who's herniated a disc, what they did is they took the rocker point called a nucleus and they had it pushed so far backwards because of being stuck in a flexed posture in their low back or in their neck that it made its way back towards where the nerve roots are. Our kids can have this happen too, so it's really important that we keep them in a neutral position, and every time they're bent forward, we get them back into extension. Protects their posture and improves the function and the communication of the network between the brain and the spinal cord. So other thing is we want to make sure we get adjusted. I cannot stress the importance of this. As a pediatric chiropractor, as a dad, knowing the impact this thing has and all of the research that's out there on this, there are numerous positive effects that getting adjusted has on a child's brain. One of the biggest things is it dramatically improves brain function. There was a research study that was done recently by Dr. Heidi Habeck, where she reproduced a similar effect that had been documented in 4 other studies that were taken through several different neuroscience journals. But the big thing is that each time a child gets adjusted, the impact goes directly to an area called the prefrontal cortex, which is where all of our ability to organize our thoughts, higher level functions, speech, stress management, immune function, our ability to organize memories. So all of our higher level functions live in that part of the brain. And every time that your child gets adjusted, that part of the brain is going to be affected, and it lights it up by an average of 20% per adjustment, which is huge. So other positive effects, it helps to improve focus and attention, helps to reduce anxiety, better adaptability to stress, whether it's chemical, physical, or emotional stressors. Children have substantially stronger immune systems when they get adjusted. So there's been several studies that have shown the significant immune effects. One of the bigger ones, which I really like to reference, there was a study that was done a few years back, which talked about, they did an in vitro study that showed that the blood samples from people that were adjusted versus people that were not adjusted. The people that were adjusted, regardless of lifestyle, had an average of a 200% stronger immune response. if a person was well adjusted and adopted a healthier lifestyle, the average improvement in immune strength was 400% versus non-adjusted individuals. And of course, pain conditions. So kids that get headaches and low back pain, it dramatically improves their function in those areas as well. So some important things to keep in mind, because one of the things we always care about is trying to make sure we're doing everything that we can to help our kids to have the best quality of life, have the best strength of immunity, help to give them the best chance to have the most awesome year in school possible. And there's no better way than getting them adjusted. That is an awesome drug-free positive solution to help to go and maximize brain and nervous system function. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Here's our contact information. That is our website, elitefamilychiros.com. You can also call our office at 440-230-2300, or follow us on Facebook at our Elite Family Chiropractic Facebook page. And we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All right, guys, this is Dr. Scott. God bless you all. Be elite.